All right, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're breaking down a seriously chilling narrative of a drive gone terribly, terribly wrong. We're going to examine this fascinating and honestly terrifying sequence of events that unfolds on a completely desolate stretch of pavement. It's a story that perfectly illustrates just how quickly a simple late-night drive can spiral into an absolute nightmare. And, it taps right into why our minds are so deeply captivated by urban legends and that profound instinctual fear of the unknown. Let's get right into it.
I want you to put yourself in these shoes for a second. Would you drive down a supposedly haunted highway just because someone dared you to? I mean, for most of us, that's going to be a resounding no way. But our protagonist in this narrative, a young woman named Jenna, she was a bit different. She had always been super adventurous, never really wanted to shy away from a thrill or back down from a challenge. So when her friends dared her to drive totally alone down this infamous stretch of highway, she just accepted it, like without a moment of hesitation.
Let's dive into this. Part 1. The Midnight Dare.
So the inciting incident kicks off as Jenna sets out, completely alone, on a pitch-black, moonless night. And what starts out as a fun, thrill-seeking exercise rapidly deteriorates into something much darker. As she drives deeper into her journey, the environment just immediately sets this really hostile stage. She finds herself on this winding, narrow path with absolutely no signs of civilization anywhere in sight. The source material describes the road as seemingly endless, literally twisting and turning into the dark. And to add to that sensory isolation, the wind begins whispering through the trees. It creates these super eerie, ghostly sounds that just send immediate shivers right down Jenna's spine.
Moving on to Part 2, Whispering Hollow Road.
This is where the whole vibe just shifts dramatically. What started out as a confident, simple dare completely transforms into a setting of genuine, suffocating isolation. The text actually notes that the only light came from the dim glow of her car's headlights, which seemed to slice through the darkness like a fragile lifeline. I think that beautifully illustrates her extreme vulnerability out there. In the pitch black of a moonless night, those headlights aren't just helping her see the road, they're acting as her only defense. It's her solitary tether to reality against this overwhelming, creeping darkness. It really highlights how intense physical isolation can immediately start amplifying our deepest psychological fears.
Now, what's really interesting here is how the source material uses such vivid, sensory language to make the environment itself feel alive and incredibly hostile. The trees aren't just trees, they are silent sentinels. Their branches aren't just, blowing in the wind, they're actually reaching out to claw at the car. It's like the landscape itself is actively closing in on her, ramping up the tension with every single passing mile.
And as she drives, unease really begins to grow, because she remembers exactly why this place is so infamous among the locals. The lore surrounding Whispering Hollow Road is, frankly, incredibly dark. It's totally filled with ominous warnings and terrifying legends. Specifically, there are these tales of travelers who ventured onto this exact road and simply never returned. Remembering these dark rubers out there, all alone in the dark? Yeah, that starts to heavily play on her nerves.
Which brings us to Part 3,
Crackles.
the radio.
So, the heavy silence of her journey is about to break big time. Let's quickly trace the timeline of how Jenna's terrifying experience just rapidly escalates. It starts with this baseline of the desolate road, right? That establishes the eerie atmosphere. Then we get the distorted radio voice, which basically shatters her isolation in the absolute worst way possible. Following that, her mind starts playing tricks on her, or maybe they aren't tricks, as she sees strange shapes in the shadows darting across the road. And finally, the whole shebang culminates in the ultimate encounter, the pale ghostly figure.
Let's take a closer look
for a second. The radio, which had been dead silent for the entire trip, suddenly crackles to life. But it's not playing music. Oh no. It emits this distorted, hissing voice that is almost inaudible, but distinct enough to send a profound chill right down her spine. Jenna's heart is just pounding in her chest. But remember, she's adventurous, right? So she grips the steering wheel tighter and actually presses her foot harder on the accelerator. She's absolutely determined to prove to herself that she isn't afraid of a few silly ghost stories. All right, Part 4.
Ghostly Hitchhiker. We have reached the climax. Her nerves are totally on edge. Shadows are dancing at the periphery of her vision, and she rounds a particularly sharp curve to face an unavoidable encounter. Her headlights illuminate a sight that basically makes her blood run completely cold. There is a figure standing dead in the middle of the road. It's a young girl with this pale, ghostly appearance. She has long, wet hair clinging to her face, and as Jenna looks at her, the girl just stares back with these hollow, empty eyes. A profound, paralyzing sense of dread absolutely washes over Jenna.
Crucial point here is how this haunting encounter connects right back to the local legends Jenna had tried so hard to ignore. She suddenly remembers the specific story of the ghostly hitchhiker. It's this tragic spirit that supposedly haunts this very stretch of Whispering Hollow Road, forever seeking a ride to her final destination. The myth has, literally, just become her terrifying reality.
And astonishingly, Jenna summons every single ounce of courage she has left, rolls down her window just a little bit, and actually speaks to the figure. She asks, "Are you okay?" But man, the sheer wrongness of the situation hits her instantly. In that split second, Jenna quickly realizes that, yeah, accepting this dare and coming out here, that was a massive, irreversible mistake.
Which leads us to our final section, No Return. At this point, Jenna shifts from bravery to pure survival instinct. She is desperately attempting to flee the nightmare she's essentially driven straight into. She wants to get out of there as fast as humanly possible. But the environment turns on her again. Suddenly, the radio starts crackling once more. Jenna is straight up panicking, pleading with the stupid radio, wondering why it simply won't turn off. She's desperately trying to rationalize her escape, right? Just trying to focus on literally anything other than the absolute horror she just witnessed.
And that brings us to this terrifying number 1. As the radio refuses to stop, Jenna tries to comfort herself by thinking, okay, I only have 1 more mile to go. Just 1 mile until it's all over. 1 mile until she is safe, and she swears she will never, ever have to come back to this awful place again.
But unfortunately, that fragile lifeline of her headlights, it just wasn't enough to save her from the road's dark legacy. The tragic finality of the source material here is stark. Like many others who took a wrong turn and got lost on Whispering Hollow Road, Jenna sadly never returned. To this day, no one will ever know what truly happened to her after she encountered that figure in the dark.
Deeply unsettling narrative, isn't it? It's all about isolation, the absolute power of local lore, and the sheer dangers of testing fate. Which ultimately leaves us with this lingering, really provocative thought to ponder. When the darkness closes in and the radio crackles to life, what do you think really happened to Jenna out there on Whispering Hollow Road? Well, thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep seeking the truth in the details, and I'll catch you next time.